which actually is a really good story in like vintage guitar, because everything's got a story, right? So
Right.
he didn't necessarily want to let it go, and he said, "I'll trade you for a similar era 335 mono with Baritone," which at the time I had no idea what that meant. But the answer was absolutely, I'll find one. That is one of the rarest instruments.
All right, everybody, we are back at last with another episode of Guitar Stories, and today we get to go talk with the one and only Mr. JD Simo. So JD is just an incredible musician. He is constantly doing sessions or producing albums or recording his own album, touring, gigging, just so many things. He did all the guitars in the recent Elvis movie. Any of the guitars you heard there were him. And then he's doing the guitars in the Bruce Springsteen movie that's coming out, Deliver Me From Nowhere. Just amazing. He just came out with an album right here, Do the Rump with Luther Dickinson, and I love this album. One of my personal favorite JD albums is his Mind Control album, and just awesome. One of the things I wish that JD did more was post more on his YouTube channel. I'll link that down below. You got to check it out. He does a thing called Greasy Time. I love every episode that he posts, and getting to hang out with JD a little bit just solidified. He's a great musician, incredible musician. Turns out he's an even better person. So thanks for letting me come over, man. And if you guys want to see more of these, do me a huge favor. Hit the subscribe button, come back to this channel, and let's go hang out with JD for a little bit, and let's talk about guitars. Mr. JD Simo.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for letting me hang out at the, what'd you call your studio?
The House of Grease.
The House of Grease.
It was a joke to begin with, and it has remained. So, like most things,
Now you're stuck with it.
Now I'm stuck with it.
But I like it.
It fits, it fits, I think.
JD's got an awesome YouTube channel. I always look forward to Greasy Time. And
thank you.
What are some of the guitars you got here? I mean, the Red 335 is the main one that I associate with you, and now the Dano. But
yeah. We can talk. Yeah. I mean, the 335, like this guitar is the one that really sort of changed. I have three instruments. I was just having this conversation the other night with somebody. In my lifetime, I've had three instruments that like changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
And the three of them, I wasn't really looking for. It's weird how everything that I've ever been like, I need to get one of those because I see somebody do something or whatever.
Yeah.
If somebody I love is using something, it's like, I need to get one of those. And it has never worked for me. It's always epic fail 100% of the time. It's never worked. So anyway, the first of those I don't have anymore, which was a Telecaster that was built with very little, if any, of my involvement in that I used. It was a white Telecaster that I used while I was in the Don Kelly band. I just got it, and it was just a special instrument, and I used it for the majority of the years that I was with Don. And I let that guitar go because I'd kind of used I felt like it had served me very well. Sentimentally, I wish I still had it, because I look back now and I go, well, you know, I did kind of become a man on that instrument. But this instrument found its way to me right at the end of my time with Don Kelly. And my friend Gary Bohannon, who is back working at Carter Vintage, he had this guitar in his stash of vintage instruments, and it had a Bigsby on it and a custom-made plaque, and it was in really great shape. And it was kind of the first really good old guitar I ever had access to.
Yeah.
And he was kind enough to let me borrow it a bunch, which was a horrible mistake, because then I became reliant on it, and I was like, I have to have this instrument. And so we worked out a deal, which actually is a really good story in like vintage guitar, you know, because everything's got a story, right? So he didn't necessarily want to let it go, and he said, I'll trade you for a similar era 335 mono with Baritone, which at the time I had no idea what that meant. But the answer was absolutely, I'll find one. That is one of the rarest instruments, because what that is, you know, it's a 335 with a rosewood neck, but with a Baritone switch and not a stereo jack, a mono jack. Okay, so that would have been a custom order.
Right.
So essentially, it's a 345 but mono, with block inlays instead of the parallelograms, which would make it a 345. So I don't remember, the annals of time have gotten to me here, where it's like, I don't remember if it was a week later, 2 weeks later, but it was a short amount of time. Our mutual friend Crawford White, who's an old school vintage dealer, got one.
Really?
And I saw the blood drain from Gary's face. Like he couldn't believe. But it's like, you know, not that I feel like the universe is like concerned with like what guitars we end up with. I think that's going way off the deep end. But it was just like, well, that's interesting. I mean, so I sold everything I had that was of worth, and I bought that guitar for cash and traded it for this. And what's funny is I know where that guitar is now. There's a friend of mine in New York City who ended up with that mono 335. And there is a part of me at different times where I've been like, it would be cool to have both of them. Like, you know, like again, for sentimental. It was a great guitar. But so anyway, so I got this, and I'm I'm a serial monogamist when it comes to guitars. Unlike our mutual friends, you know, Bukovac and Jed and stuff like that, like I tend to, every once in a while, an instrument will find its way into my life, and I just I'm there for a long time. Like I just, you know, and this guitar certainly, I mean, it's pretty trashed. I'm a much different musician than I was when this was my main instrument. I was a much more cavalier, aggressive, you know, hell, half the time I play sitting down now. So it's a very different world, but I beat the living piss out of this, and it served me well. Unfortunately, it did get a headstock crack under my service, which Glazier fixed. We were playing the City Winery in DC, and we got done with the show, and like the guitar boat was like up on a road case, like as I was walking off stage. So it was like, thank you very much, good night. Put it in the boat, walk, you know, to like go get a drink of water or whatever, chill out. And the sound guy, one of the sound guys, was like quickly wrapping up cables and hit the case. And this, because I just put it in, it wasn't strapped. It wasn't strapped in, so it went, and it cracked. It cracked right, like from the middle of the headstock, like down here. And it was, I mean, it was interesting because I'm not that precious, you know. But it was like a total guttural, like, oh my God, what just happened, you know? And so anyway, Joe fixed it, and the irony being, it actually sounded better afterwards. And Joe said to me after the fact, he said, well, they typically do, but he's like, the last thing you want to hear is that. when you're bringing it in to get fixed.
Did you say why? Because it readjusts the angle, or?
I have no idea. I have no idea, but I'm sure he could tell you.
Yeah.
But it did. It was like it was like it was a little sharper sounding. Like it's like a little rubberiness was taken away from it. I know that guitar players talking about sounds is like it's like got to be one of the most infuriating.
It's the best.
Like, what are you talking about? Well, it's like a pillowy, marshmallowy, and it's like, oh my God, stop talking. But no, it just became like it became sharper sounding. Like it wasn't. It like got brighter in a good way.
Yeah,
is like the best way to that without saying, well, it sounded like there was some oregano on it, or. But so anyway, so there's that. I've had it refretted twice, maybe twice. I can't remember.
Joe did that too? Or?
Oh yeah, Joe and Nick are. I mean,
who else do you need to go to?
And they're so amazing, especially these last few years as like sessioning has gotten more and more intense, because I don't have a lot of instruments. Like I have my handful that I use, as we were talking before we started doing this. Like I have my couple that I use, and it's like that's what I have and that's what I use. So it's like when I need something done, it's usually like, well, shit, this is the day I'm not working. Do you mind if I, and Nick and Joe are always amazing. I think really it comes down to, it's like whenever you're honest, like if you're just being like I'm very honest about like a want versus need, right? Where it's like I'm not going like I need this by it's like, no, if it's something I need, I'll they're more than happy to. But again, guitar players are funny that way. Our need versus want. It's like, do we really need that?
Of course we do.
Exactly. So, but yeah, it's been refretted a couple of times, and I had Joe at some point, I had him put this push-pull in, which makes it go out of phase, because I love out-of-phase sounds.
Okay, you were talking about that with your...
Yeah, it's the same thing in the Dan when I talk about that. Yeah, and unfortunately, it meant that he had to take apart an old PAF to do that, but Joe is the guy to do that, if that's gonna happen. And at some point, a few years ago, Gibson, the custom shop, did a run of some copies of these, which was crazy. Most of its life with me has been stop tail, but I have put the Bigsby on it, taken it off, put it back on. It's kind of something to some little things like that I do when I get bored.
Yeah. So how long have you had this?
I got this guitar in 2011, 2010, something like that. So long enough to really have been through some shit together. A lot of planes, a lot of overseas touring all over the United States.
That's cool.
A lot of recording. Tons.
So to anyone who doesn't know, you played on the Elvis movie. Now, was this on there at all, or was that more the big body that you used a lot on that?
There's some stuff that was this. I mean, we recorded so much for that film.
I'm sure that's a whole different experience, isn't it?
Well, yeah, because we worked on it like in little chunks over like a 2-year period.
Yeah.
So it's like we would work for a whole week, or we might have worked 2 weeks at a time, a handful of times. And then we wouldn't see anybody again for months and months, and then we would reconvene and cut more stuff, and so I mean, this was definitely there for some of it. I probably some of the I'm sure probably some of the bigger, there's like in the Louisiana hayride scene, when it gets all crazy and it's all fuzz guitared out and stuff, that's probably this. That's more than likely this.
That's cool.
Because I probably wouldn't have used the other stuff that was on hand. I used this on the War and Treaties last record, which is a great record. I used this on Chris Isaak's last couple of records. This has definitely been there, and made it on stuff on there, and certainly my records, and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, because you were kind of saying how it's taken a little bit of a backseat.
Yeah.
More recently.
So yeah, that's actually a pretty decent transition.
Segue.
So this guitar has become like my de facto blanket over the last couple of years, and so I'd reached a point where like the 335 was sort of I mean, it's amazing. There's nothing wrong with it, but I just kind of was wanting something else, and I didn't really know what it was, and so I tried a couple of like Guitarist type of things, and then my buddy Gabriel from Echo Park, there was a guitar he put together that I was kind of into, that had gold foils and was kind of an offset guitar. And my buddy Zach Childs, who was like, why don't you go over to Dan Strain Telecaster? He's like, why don't you go over to Dan Strain's and see what he's got lying around? And I was like, oh, that's a great idea, because I've known Dan for years, but never had any of his instruments.
Right.
And so I was working over at the Wood Brothers studio in West Nashville, which is not far from Dan's house, because Dan's house is a little far from me. And as we were discussing earlier, if I'm home or I have nothing to do, I'm kind of a homebody. And
yeah, he's out like Mount Juliet and stuff, isn't he? Like out that way.
Like past Bellevue.
Oh, okay. So yeah,
on the west side of town, and so
that's a hike.
It is, and I'm again, like I'm more likely to sit and listen to a jazz record and smoke a cigar than I am to go out and do stuff.
Yeah.
So I was going to be out at the Wood Brothers place, which is like 10 minutes from his place, and so he's like, yeah, why don't you come by? And so he's like, I don't really have much because everything I make I sell, but he's like, this is mine. This was his personal guitar. And yeah, I just knew immediately. It was like, so the three guitar. This is the third of the three guitars that like really kind of changed my life. And I wasn't necessarily looking for a Telecaster or anything. I was, I'd played a Telecaster all those years that I was with Don Kelly, and then the 335 found its way to me, and then it was like completely different. And in some ways, it's like I realized that all those years, the 10,000 hour thing comes into account, because I was with Don for 6 years full time, and like maybe say another year, like a half a year before and a half a year on the at the end, as I'm like on my way out the door.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know, do the math. I mean, it's like 4 hours a night for 4 to 5 nights, sometimes 6, because I played Sundays with him, sometimes 2. I mean, it's like, it's probably 10 on a Telecaster style. So like, it's so burned into me, like how it feels and how, just anyway, so it just felt really natural, and this is a really good one. He put old pickups in it. That was his thing he did for himself. So like, this is a 62 that came out of a 345. It's essentially the same pickup that's in it. I mean, it's it's very close. And then this came out of a 56 Telecaster, and it's just phenomenal. And one of the things and again, like, this is not something that I had anything to do with, but like, he put this pickup slightly this way than you would normally put a neck pickup.
Right.
And it's a thing.
It changed the... It's like a jazz thing, isn't it?
For the better, I mean, where you hear it is in the in-between position, because it's like, this is like, it sounds like an old school soul guitar. It sounds like Cornell Dupree, or it's like, it's just a perfect, and the tone control is only on the bridge pickup, which is another thing. And then I had Joe put this in, which makes these go out of phase, same as on the 335. And so yeah, this instrument has just become the main thing. I mean, it's all I need, you know.
That's cool. So your white telly that you played with Don Kelly, was it like Olympic white, or was it kind of like blonde like this?
It was Olympic white that got really faded over time.
Yeah.
And I beat up really bad. And then eventually that guitar, I sat in the other room here and painted it with psychedelic paint one night. Towards the end of my days with Don Kelly, I just was bored one night and had these Dayglow like paint pens that my wife and I were like painting stuff with. And I started doing it, and it's like, once you start, it's the point of no return. And so like, it's still like that to this day. Somebody sold it, that guitar, like recently sold, like maybe 3-4 months ago.
Oh,
and
really?
I saw, and they were somebody was asking a lot of money for it. And again, like, I was more than I would be ever willing to pay.
Yeah.
Because I don't think, I mean, it's just my old piece of shit that I beat up. But again, for sentimental reasons, like, I would love to have it, you know.
What was it? Anything? Was it like a vintage?
No. It was a company in Kentucky that I think is still around in Lexington called RS Guitar Works built it.
Oh, cool.
And what happened was that guitar. There was a guy who a really sweet guy that used to come see the Don Kelly band all the time, and he is from Lexington, Kentucky, and he wanted to pay to have RS build a guitar for me, a guitar for Don, and a bass for Dave Rowe. And so at that point, I'd been in Don's band a little while, like maybe a year and a half or something. And like, I had a Telecaster that I was comfortable with, and invariably, being in his band, a lot of people started offering to give me or want me to try their guitars.
Yeah. And
none of them stuck. And it was a weird thing of either giving instruments back to people because I was like, I don't like this, and then hurting their feelings and feeling weird about it, or accepting guitars and being like, I don't like this instrument, and and I know it may seem like oh, that's terrible, man.
Yeah.
But it's like I actually had like a hard time with it, like, because I was just like, I don't want to take advantage of people, and I don't want to be put in a position where I was like, I'm fine, I don't, you know. And so by the time this happened, I was kind of like, I don't really, no, I'm good, like, I don't, you know. And to which I had Dave and Don being like, don't fuck this up for us, man. Like, God damn it, shut up, JD.
Take the telly.
Yeah, exactly. And so as a result, I had nothing to, I like, the guy who built it, like, called me, and I think I may have offended him slightly, because he was like, well, what do you want? And I was like, I don't care. Like, just build a guitar, you know. I had no, you know, I think at the reason why it ended up being white with a rosewood board is I said, well, I like Mike Bloomfield and Steve Cropper make it look like that.
Yeah.
But that was like the edge of my involvement. And you know what? And case in point, the instrument showed up, and it was like, whoa. And it was like, you know, and it wasn't because of me saying, oh, I need a neck like this and frets like this and put these pickups in it and it needs this capacity, you know, like, it just was a really good one.
Yeah.
Like, luck of the draw which is, I think, in the end, all great instruments, like, you know, I mean, I truly feel like the amount of times where it's like just line 10 of them up, it's like invariably there might be one that's like, wow, this is really good.
Yeah,
and it's not because of any lack of effort or.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't, sometimes you don't know why a certain instrument connects with you over the other 10 that are amazing, but.
No. So, and it's just been wonderful, and this has suited me well, and it's great because I fly a lot to play on records and to play as well, but especially like flying to go play on records and stuff like that. And it's like I have a Calton case for this, and it's like putting a Telecaster in a Calton is like putting a Humvee inside a tank. You know, it's like I have absolutely as I'm walking through the airport with my little shoulder bag unencumbered, it's like it's kind of a nice feeling.
Well, and I like so it's funny is that it's the one that you've picked up that's plugged in.
Oh,
so far, like
it is.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like
it's the last one I was working with.
Yeah, definitely. Like that's the one that you're playing.
Yeah, no, it is. And I mean, I've got some other fun stuff, and we can talk about that stuff too if you want.
Yeah, anything you want to.
Yeah, I mean,
shows the big body. I'm interested to see.
Yeah, no. So this one, this is a 52 ES5. I use it all the time, and not necessarily. I mean, yes, of course, I use it for rootsy kind of stuff and all that, but it's like even on rockier kind of things, it just I'm not gonna play like it's got heavy flat wounds on it, and it immediately makes me be minimalistic in what I'm playing.
Right.
And I think part of the reason why I gravitate towards it when I'm not playing the Telecaster is for that reason. Like it's just, I like what comes out of me when I'm playing this. And so it's become a great tool that I travel with all the time. And as I was saying, like when I go play on records and stuff, it's, if I'm only going to bring two instruments, it's usually this and the Telecaster.
That's cool.
And yeah, I mean, like, classically, guys like T-Bone Walker's the most famous guy who used one of these, but B.B. King, on some of his greatest early records, he was playing one of these. The Singin' the Blues record, which is his first album that he ever made, he's definitely playing one of these. And then there's a guy named Pee Wee Creighton who's from Texas, who's an old bluesman, but also, you know, jump sort of thing. He played one of these. Lowell Folsom. Actually, just recently, my friend Holger from Baton Rouge brought a Lowell Folsom's actual old ES5 that's exactly like this. Brought it to the show. We were just in Baton Rouge, and so that was cool to see. But yeah, I mean, they just for the longest time they were hanging tough in the sort of $5-ish grand thing, and now all of a sudden, just like everything else, they've shot up, and it breaks my heart because it's like there's other guys that I'm friends with that are sort of like in the roots world, and it's like these are great tools for cool music, and it kind of breaks my heart that they're not, that now even these are like unattained. Like it's like these and Jazzmasters and Jaguars and stuff like all shot up overnight to become $12,000 to $15,000 guitars when these and offsets and stuff like that were, like I said, they were like hovering in the sort of 5-ish range.
Are they just dog ears? Or
yeah.
I don't know if there's anything particular about them. Or
and it's one volume for each pickup, and this is a master tone.
Master tone.
And I actually at one point had an ABR1 put on here, and then it was recently, again, I was messing around in here, puttering around, listening to a record, and I opened up its original case, and the original wood bridge was in there from when we did that. I was like, oh, I wonder what that sounds like. Just again, like a little change that'll help stimuli, but really not.
Yeah.
And I was like, why did I change that? Like, because like it's a sound, it's a thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, why did I do that? Like to quote unquote make it better. Who lives up in Madison, my buddy Wade Kofer. I always have an instrument that's tuned down like a baritone level, and so I have this is the first guitar he ever made. This one.
Is it? But this is not a baritone. It's just a normal guitar.
It's just a normal scale, but I have it tuned like a baritone.
Like B to B.
B to B, and the Jazz Masters and Jaguars that aren't short scale, that are normal scale. The string length behind the bridge like this, and usually on the headstock, I have found you can tune instruments like that down and it be successful. More so than like say a Stratocaster or a Telecaster or something like that without it being baritone scale.
Yeah.
I have found this setup, because I had a really cool old Jazz Master that I used that had weird pickups in it that I used for years, that I actually used on the Elvis movie, on the Sister Rosetta Thorpe stuff. But this instrument is great. He made these pickups. It's sort of a Teisco. It's just a really solid Teisco kind of sound.
The more I look at it, the more like fascinated I am by it, because you start picking it apart, and I'm like, okay, it's got a slotted headstock. It's got a Jazz Master trim. It's got looks like Firebird Mini.
Yes, essentially these are like Firebird pickups.
Yeah.
And then this is like a Teisco Del Rey shark fin kind of middle pickup. And the wiring is fascinating, because so essentially when this switches all the way up, this is a regular three-way of these two pickups. Okay.
Okay.
So neck pickup, two pickups, bridge pickup. Then when you put this in the middle, it'll add the middle pickup to whatever combination you're in. And then when this is all the way down, it's just the middle pickup alone. It's very usable. It stays in tune great. You can go nuts on this, and it doesn't go out of tune. And he's a dear buddy.
Well, man, thank you so much for showing us all that.
Dude, thank you.
And I appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you, man. I love watching your stuff.
Oh, thank you, dude. Hey, gang, thank you all so much for watching the video. And again, JD, if you happen to see the end of the video, thanks for letting me come over, man. All these musicians and guitarists here around town who are giving up all this time to let me record them, talk to them, share the stories, it means a lot to me. I appreciate it. It seems like you guys watching it at home really appreciate it. So thank you all. If you want to see more of it, like I said, make sure you subscribe. Go check out JD's channel. Check out his music, all the things he has going on, because he's just a wonderful person to support. So other than that, I'm out here, guys. Hope you all have a good rest of your day, and see you all soon. Later, homies.